All right, welcome, everybody to Everything Black. We got Regina, we got myself, Mr. Frank. Um, I'm glad y'all joining us tonight. We're going over something very important. I don't know if y'all know about Isaac Woodrow, but he was what I call the first civil rights movement. A lot of people don't know about him, but we're going to talk about him, and hopefully after tonight you'll remember him. All right, let me get started with this.
Supreme. I didn't say better. Supreme just means, hey, they can tell you what to do and you can't tell them. That makes them supreme. That's what white supremacy means. They can tell you what to do, but you can't tell them. You can't make them do nothing. And they'll challenge you if they, of course, we usually don't challenge them. We'll stand there when we're mad and say we demand, but that's not really what we mean. We really mean we're asking in a loud voice, because we can't demand nothing. Because see what when it comes right down to it, when they back up and say, okay, you say you're demanding,
Or use YouTube,
you're gonna make me
Facebook.
do what you want me to do. All right, do it. Say, come on now. Say, now you do this among your own people, you get away with it, but you're dealing with a master now. Make me. All this stuff you're talking about that you got to have, make me. You're intelligent. You said that you are. You said your people are this and that, and you come from a long line of this. Make me. None of us have proven that we can meet that yet. None of us. In all these years, some of us can talk pretty loud, and we can do a job on each other like you wouldn't believe. But when Master Man says, make me, we melt. And the evidence shows it. Now, is that supposed to make us feel real bad and crawl under a rock and all like that? No, that's what makes you strong. Why? According to logic. To admit that you're a prisoner of war is strength, if that's what you are. That's the first step toward not being a prisoner. Realize that you are one. But see, black males in particular, we like to flex our muscles. Boy, do we ever like to act like we are really men. And we will slaughter each other on 8th Street out there any day in the week to prove it. We ain't nowhere close. Because when the real man comes around, we melt. You see us running across parking lots and hiding under cars. When we were real men, we'd meet him halfway. We'd say, where is it? You ain't saying nothing but the word. Where is it? Point to which way he's coming from. All right? No. Oh, yes. That's why as I become aware of things, because the white supremacists are always coming up with something, some refined way of practicing white supremacy.
Oh, shit. All right. I had to show that just to kind of get us in the mind frame of where we are, who we are. And Regina, do you have anything to say against anything he said?
No, not really. Because that kind of is when it comes to white supremacy. He pretty much covered. Um, it almost kind of mimics some of the stuff that the Willie Lynch stuff was saying. On how to uh, keep us at odds with each other. As long as you're keeping people at odds and having everybody, you know, kind of ingraining that, that we're supposed to be less than them, then then we're put in our place
Okay,
and try to keep us fighting amongst each other because we fighting amongst each other, we can't fight them. So
that's
uh, that's just part. It's just a playbook. And sometimes it takes somebody to tell you this is what's happening, for you to kind of see what's going on. Because at first you're gonna say, "No, that's not what happened," because you just can't believe that fell for it.
right.
But after you hear it and then you start seeing it for yourself, it's kind of hard to uh to disagree with what he's saying. Sometimes you just got to keep hearing it over and over again so you can see how it's working. And social media is real good at keeping us in that spot and keeping us in a certain peg to where we're kept down because we're constantly focused in on a whole bunch of stuff that we need to be focused in on something else.
Correct. All right. Let me go to the get us started here. Fair use, you too. Fair use.
Good morning, this is Orson Welles speaking. I'd like to read to you an affidavit. I, Isaac Woodard, Jr., being duly sworn, do depose and state as follows. I'm 27 years old and a veteran of the United States Army, having served for 15 months in the South Pacific and earned 1 battle star. While I was in uniform, I purchased a ticket to Winnsboro, South Carolina, and took the bus headed there to pick up my wife to come to New York to see my father and mother. About 1 hour out of Atlanta, the bus drivers got off and went and got the police. The policeman grabbed me by my left arm and twisted it behind my back. I figured he was trying to make me resist. I did not resist against him. Another policeman held his gun on me while the other one was beating me. I started to get up. He started punching me in my eyes. He knocked me unconscious. I woke up next morning and could not see. They took me to the Veterans Hospital in Columbia, South Carolina. They told me I should join a blind school.
You have a man wearing a dress uniform. He has medals on his chest. All the symbols of sacrifice and service are there. And it doesn't matter. It just doesn't matter.
To a white Southerner in 1946, nothing is more provocative than a black man in uniform.
You have law enforcement coming with the full savagery of Southern racism. No one can say that what happened to Isaac Woodard was justified.
It just seemed to be something that shouldn't happen in America.
Now it seems the officer of the law is just another white man with a stick who wanted to teach a Negro boy a lesson, to show a Negro boy where he belonged in the darkness.
Are we going to have people who live in the United States and are less equal than others? What are we going to do about this?
You say the North is bullying the South. I'm afraid you're missing the point. This isn't another battlefield of the Civil War. The sides aren't the blue and the gray. They are the right, the wrong.
Who would have guessed that the blinding of a heroic veteran would be the beginning of the end of Jim Crow in America?
Major funding for American Experience is provided by...
At Liberty Mutual, we believe progress happens when people feel secure. That's why we exist.
To go to the bathroom,
And the bus driver tells him, boy, go sit back down.
And the extraordinary sum of $695. Enough to start the kind of life he hadn't dared dream of before the war. Like the other 900,000 African American soldiers returning home from duty, Isaac Woodard had come to see this bright new future as his due.
African Americans had fought in all of the major wars in American history, and there's always been this theme of if we fight and we show our loyalty, then we are going to advance and be recognized as more equal citizens. And that dream had always been frustrated. But World War II was actually quite different from past wars for African Americans because it was a special kind of war.
Yeah,
This war, this particular war, crystallizes around the idea of this fight against fascism. And that means that it is a fight against inequality, of suppressing groups of people because of their race. So you have Black soldiers coming home, having been inculcated with the idea that America stands for something different than fascism, something different than racial and ethnic discrimination, something better.
By 10 o'clock on that February evening, Isaac Woodard was little more than an hour away from his homecoming in Winsboro.
The atmosphere on the bus is jovial, filled with the relief that soldiers feel after surviving 15 months at war. Black soldiers and white soldiers are talking together, joking together. Eventually, a bottle of whiskey gets opened and passed around.
There were a few non-soldiers on the bus, and they were very uncomfortable with the interaction between the white and black soldiers. There were complaints to the bus driver, and the bus driver didn't like it.
There are, of course, in 1946, no bathroom facilities on public buses. Isaac Woodard asked the bus driver if at the next stop he could be allowed to disembark and to go to the bathroom.
And the bus driver tells him, boy, go sit back down.
The bus driver cursed him. Isaac Woodard cursed him back and proclaimed his manhood.
He just said to the gentleman, you know, you don't have to speak to me in that manner. I'm a man just like you. In other words, give me respect.
Military training and service turned a Black man from the rural Deep South with a 5th grade education into a man willing to say words that he knew could put his life at risk. There is no doubt when he said that he was under any illusions about what he was saying, where he was saying it, on a bus, at night, in the Deep South. But he was a veteran. He was wearing the uniform. He was surrounded by veterans who were wearing the uniforms. They were returning from a war that they had won, and he was a stronger man because of it.
The bus driver is furious. At the next town, he goes looking
of their race.
Oh, shit.
So you have Black.
Regina, what you think about that so far? He gave his life. I mean, he knew that if he said something, his life was in danger. Now, would you have said anything like that? I mean, you know, you're on the bus.
Well, you know, you got it. Well, you in the Deep South, but you got to understand they've been in war, and for I don't know how long, but they've been
I
over
think
in
it was
Europe,
3 years
and
or so.
yeah, so they've been up in Europe, so they became another kind of normal came. It was a new normal for them because they were able to go places. They didn't have to bow down to nobody. They didn't have they were able to be equals with everybody the way it's really supposed to be.
Right.
And that's what they're used to, because most people when they go into the military, they're young. They just got off from under their parents' rule. They're out there being adults when they still pretty much little kids. So when they're having freedom to move around and do stuff, here it is. I no longer have to say Mr. Whoever and not look at nobody in the eye. I'm a man over here.
Hmm.
So when he come back, that's hard to kind of rally back to the point to where now I got to be a boy
Right.
to all these, to these grown folks and some little kids. I'm still a boy.
Right.
And that's hard to switch gears and say now I got to talk to this man in a certain way because he feel like I'm less than. That's hard to do, especially after you don't sit there and risk your whole life. Seen death. You've been saving white people. Been
Yeah.
doing all kinds of stuff, and then you gonna come over here and I got on a whole uniform and you can't respect me no better than that. But you gonna talk to me crazy?
Right.
That's hard to do.
Right.
So I can see how it got to the point to where it is,
Right.
and it just it it just boggles me. It just really boggles my mind what our ancestors had to go through living in certain parts of the United States. And in some parts, even the northern parts, they couldn't run around doing a whole bunch of stuff too when it come to white folks. They just had better freedoms, but they still wasn't to the point to where we are now. Nowhere near and close to it at all. So
Right.
um, I feel for them, and they put them in a certain situation in Europe, and they got to taste of freedom. They got to taste of being able to say what they want and being the person that they want, and being a whole man, and then come back over here, and then you 3/5 of a person when you come back over here. Then I feel bad for them.
Right. Um, what I got out of it was, I think that I think sometime we for I know he had to forget where he was.
Uh-huh.
I know he was used over there. He was used to the white women all over him and
Mhm.
all that type of thing they had going on. The
Mhm.
white guys treating them equal. I know that's early up in the video. A lot of y'all didn't see that part, but if y'all go and watch this full video, you'll see what I'm talking about. Like he said, the guy knew his life was in danger when he said that, or it could have been in
Yeah.
danger. And
Yeah,
to
I think
me,
it. I think it slipped out before he like. Oh no,
yeah,
I'm like
yeah,
I'm not where I used to be.
right, right. So
Whole thing.
yeah, that's going on today. Even though we can do that today, if we're in
We
a
can.
certain place
Hmm.
in America right now today, if we're in a certain place, uh, stepping up trying to be the man thing may not be a good idea at that time and moment.
Not at all times. We all know you are, but
Right,
sometimes you got to be smart, and
right,
you got to read the room, and you
right,
got to understand where you are.
right,
And yeah, you can stand your ground, but are you gonna live to tell the story about it later on? That's the
right,
whole thing.
right,
And and I feel bad for these kids because they're not prepared. They lived in a whole nother way of doing stuff to where they always have been told that they are able to come and go where they please, and they got all these rights and all this other stuff, and they don't know no different, you
right,
know. And putting in those situations where somebody said, "Well, why didn't you just go ahead and just do certain things and then just talk about it later?" We'll fight this fight later. They never been put in a situation to where they had to, or never seen anybody that had to. So they don't think that. They don't know that world is really out there. They hear about it, but they never seen it, never experienced it, never seen anybody put in that situation. So
Yeah.
I kind of
Well,
feel for them.
right. Like Neely Fuller, that's the guy I was playing a while ago. Neely
Hmm.
Fuller Jr. He says in his book that if you are in a situation like that, you would ask the guy, you would be like, "Sir, you are a man just like I am," or
Hmm.
he would flip the question. He wouldn't have said, um, at the next stop, is it all right if I use the restroom? Then the guy go off on, he said, was he would have said, like, if since you are in charge, sir, I know you as a man has had to use the restroom and there's no place here to use it. And I would like to disbarkle if you who are in charge would let me do so. You
Hmm.
know what I'm saying? You letting them
Uh-huh.
know, okay, you in charge. I'm not disrespecting you by saying to you I'm a man. You know, you already know what I am.
Hmm.
I'm just letting you know you're in charge of this man, in a sense, which would kind of like
Yeah,
let him
yeah,
know,
and I get that. And had he been home for a second, he would have had time to switch gears.
right.
But he
But
was
I
at a
understand what you're
disadvantage.
saying. Yeah, I
He was
understand.
at a disadvantage because he haven't been in that situation in such a long time
Right,
that he had to be reminded and remember, oh, this is not how I have been living for the last 3 years. Because 3 years
right,
to somebody in their early 20s is a
right,
long time.
right.
Three,
And
three
I
years to
also
somebody in the 20s is a long time. It's like a lifetime almost.
like I said, it was more soldiers on the bus, according to the way they was talking about the video. It was more because they were
Uh-huh.
passing out liquor,
Yeah,
so it
and
had to
drinking
be
this
more
liquor
soldiers.
behind each other. It was white. And then it was white soldiers, and
Yeah,
and that's what they were uncomfortable about. It wasn't the fact that
right.
there were soldiers on there. It was comfortable. They were uncomfortable that the white soldiers and the black soldiers
We're
were
getting
acting
along.
like brothers.
Right,
And they was getting along. They was drinking behind each other out the same bottles and all kinds of stuff. And they was probably calling each other brother and acting like they was best of friends. Them people was uncomfortable with that.
right.
They never saw that, and they didn't want nobody coming down here getting no bright ideas and,
And I
and
want
getting they colored folks down there some ideas on how they want to be. They
right,
didn't like that.
right. And I want to also say that um, since the soldiers were on the bus, when it come time for witnesses, nobody said nothing.
Of course they didn't. Of course they didn't.
Even the white soldiers that was on the bus with them.
No, no. Well, this is it. Like you didn't get to that part, but after the incident happened, it was
But
a
we
white
gonna
guy. It was a
before
black
you
guy.
before you say that,
Hmm.
we're gonna get to it, and then we'll come
Okay.
back and talk about it.
Okay. It's a reason why.
Okay, let me go ahead and I might fast forward a little bit too.
Soldiers coming home, having been inculcated with the idea that America stands.
As he's trying to explain himself,
Hold on, let
the
me bag
police
it up.
Yeah, back it up
Boy,
just a
go
little
sit
bit.
back down.
Go just a little bit more.
Okay, there it
Okay.
is.
Uh-huh.
Let me see. Yeah, that's it.
The bus driver cursed him. Isaac Woodard cursed him back and proclaimed his manhood.
Go back one, just a little, probably
You
about
just
2 more
said to the
seconds back.
gentleman, you don't have to speak to me in that manner.
Well,
I'm a
they
man just
talking right now.
like you.
Remember you telling him
In
about
other
his
words,
manhood?
give me
Yeah.
respect.
Military training and service turned a black man from the rural deep south with a fifth grade education into
Are we good
a
here? Or we
man
need
willing
to
to
go
say
back?
words that he
No, right there. That's
knew
fine.
We good? Okay.
could put his life at risk. There is no doubt when he said that he was under any illusion about what he was saying, where he was saying it on a bus at night in the deep south. But he was a veteran. He was wearing the uniform. He was surrounded by veterans who were wearing the uniforms. They were returning from a war that they had won, and he was a stronger man because of it.
The bus driver is furious. At the next town, he goes looking for a police officer to have Woodard removed from his bus. Woodard's kind of perplexed. He steps off the bus, and as he's trying to explain himself, the police chief brings out his blackjack. It's like a baton, but it's spring-loaded and it has tremendous force, and hits Woodard over the head with it.
A soldier aboard the bus watched as the officer took Woodard by the arm and forced him around the corner and out of sight. That is the last I saw of him, he would tell investigators a few months later.
They started beating him all across the head, and they gouged his eyes out.
That was his
They
name.
didn't beat him out. They put the stick in there and twisted it. They threw him in jail, and he told me they poured whiskey over him to say he was drunk. He was arrested for supposedly disorderly conduct, disturbing the peace, and being drunk. He was not drunk. He was not being disorderly, and he did not disturb the peace.
He spends the night in jail, unable to see, in excruciating pain. The next morning, he is taken to the judge. He is levied a fine, but he can't see to sign the paperwork that is put before him. Ultimately, when Woodard is examined by specialists, they determine that he will never see again. The injuries are severe and they are irreversible. He will be blind for life.
And you spend 42 months in the military, overseas in the Philippines, and you come home to this. How can you just gouge someone's eyes out? Anybody, you can't do that. And it hurts me to even think about it. But it happened. It's sad. Well, that was, I say, a part of ignorance, you know. That's the bottom line. Plain ignorance.
Well, check out what them signs say.
What color? What did it say?
As World War II ended,
Watch this.
900,000 African American veterans returned to America. 75% of them to the South. Most of them to the rural South.
The war took Black soldiers out of communities where they had to adhere to a certain
here's
set
a
of
party
social
right here.
norms,
I think that's what they're
in
going
which they were subservient,
white women.
and open up possibilities.
Even a segregated army gave chances for training, leadership, and advancement and recognition. Those in Europe have been treated very respectfully.
Yeah.
And for the first time in their lives, the color of their skin was not the predominant characteristic to which they were identified. They came home feeling like they had done their duty in defense of American democracy and liberty.
They did.
But when they returned home,
watch this sign.
They largely saw nothing had changed.
Right there. Did
I see an 8.
Did you see that?
Uh-huh.
Yeah. Damn.
White Southerners of that era considered the
I'm
returning
gonna fast
soldiers
forward a
to
little
be
bit
potential
so we
trouble,
can get on to the
not great
South.
American citizens. As some would say, they no longer knew their.
In the middle of what Thurgood Marshall called that terrible season of 1946, Isaac Woodard walked into the New York City offices of NAACP head Walter White. The 27-year-old South Carolina native struck White as polite and handsome, with the ramrod straight bearing of a soldier. "I saw you Mr. White, when you visited my outfit in the Pacific," he said. I could see then.
Uh-oh.
Woodard then
see
sat
that.
down and told the story of his blinding
I'm
in a
sorry.
sworn affidavit.
Hmm?
You didn't see that, could you? Could you see
What?
that?
Yeah, I can see it. I can see it. I'm looking at it.
All
The
right.
police asked me, was I discharged? And when I said yes, that's when he started beating me with a billy, hitting me across the top of my head. And after that, I grabbed his billy, wrung it out his hands. Another policeman came up and threw his gun on me, told me to drop the billy or he'd drop me, so I dropped the billy. He knocked me unconscious. He hollered, "Get up." When I started to get up, he started punching me in the eyes with the end of his billy.
This is him talking to the head of the NAACP.
NAACP officials, they were moved by this, like everyone was moved by just the tragedy of it. In addition, the NAACP leadership was always on the lookout for cases of injustice that they could use to really dramatize the nature of the Southern racial system. For African Americans around the country, to get them to support the NAACP's work, and for white people, to make them understand what's really going on.
Once Walter White gets a hold of Isaac Woodard's story, he is on fire. He is looking for ways to publicize his story, and he's looking for the biggest platform out there.
How do you do, ladies and gentlemen? This is Orson Welles.
I'm Orson Welles, right?
White and his new press agent reached out to one of the nation's great dramatists, the boy wonder of stage and cinema, 31-year-old Orson Welles. In the summer of 1946, Welles was hosting a radio show that broadcast nationally every Sunday.
NAACP goes to him and says, "We need your help to share this story." The story fascinated him, particularly the whodunit quality. No one knew who this police officer was.
I think the officer of the law who blinded the young Negro boy at the affidavit has not been named. Till we know more about him, for just now we'll call the policeman Officer X. Officer X, I'm talking to you. We invite you to luxuriate in secrecy. It will be brief. You're going to be uncovered.
Welles came back to the Woodard story the next week, and the week after, drawing more listeners each episode. But there were holes in the story. 3 weeks into the radio broadcasts, there were still no real leads about Woodard's assailant, or even about the town where Woodard had been pulled from the bus. The NAACP legal team was getting nervous.
Did you know
Marshall says, "We got to get this right.
All this nice hair.
We've got our friends out on a limb on this thing."
All the lawyers got nice hair. You notice that?
Orson Welles hires
they do now.
private investigators to go throughout
Light
the
skin,
bus
they got
route to
nice
figure
hair.
out where this happened. And the NAACP's national office has its lawyers searching these communities, asking, does anyone know this story? Arriving in unsolicited in the national office is a letter from a black soldier who says, "I heard on the radio about the blinding of Sergeant Woodard. I was on the bus. It was Batesburg."
I have before me wires and press releases to the effect that a policeman of Batesburg, a man by the name of Shaw, has admitted that he was the police officer who blinded Isaac Woodard. Officer X, we know your name now. Now that we've found you out, we'll never lose you. You can't get rid of me. We have an appointment.
Wales.
The Welles broadcast had put the story in the headlines. and a whirlwind began to swirl around Isaac Woodard. When word got out that the Army had denied the young sergeant full disability benefits on the grounds that he was blinded a few hours after his discharge, luminaries from New York's Black community organized a benefit concert on his behalf. Headlined by some of the biggest names in music, stars from Billie Holiday to Woody Guthrie turned up at Lewiston Stadium in Harlem to raise money for the blind GI. Heavyweight champion Joe Louis, hero of Black America, stepped forward to co-chair the event.
Joe Louis sent a limousine to our house in the Bronx. I was 11 years old. That excited me.
Seated beside his mother, Isaac Woodard, a young man from tiny Winnsboro, South Carolina, was awestruck to learn that nearly 20,000 people had gathered in his honor.
You see those stockings?
10,000 more.
I was looking at it.
10,000 people showed up and 10,000 was turned away.
The crowd had been drawn from the all-star
amount.
performances.
Yeah, sure.
But it was Woodard himself who turned out to be the headliner. One reporter noted that applause lasted for 5 minutes after he took the stage.
He spoke in a very low voice, and people had to go be completely silent to hear him. But it was a powerful account of what happened.
I spent 3.5 years in the service of my country and thought that I would be treated as a man when I returned to civilian life. But I was mistaken. If the loss of my sight will make people in America get together to prevent what happened to me from ever happening again to any other person, I would be glad.
The benefit concert netted more than $10,000 for Isaac Woodard. Enough to buy a house, but little less.
It seemed like they only brought $1
One
a piece.
NAACP staffer noted,
Yeah, that
though Woodard
probably
was
was a lot
riding
of
high
money.
now,
Because remember, $694 was a fortune.
no one will remember his name.
Yeah.
The NAACP basically adopts a plan to make Isaac Woodard the centerpiece of a campaign for the promotion of the civil rights of all returning veterans. He goes on.
And that's what I wanted to get out. A lot of people don't know this was the beginning of the civil rights movement. He was the centerpiece. He was the start.
I tell you, till I watched this whole thing, I never paid no attention to it. I never knew him. I never heard of the name. I never even heard of anybody being blinded or anything. I had no clue. It was this is real interesting. But you know what? It kind of reminds me of the George Floyd thing.
Right.
Because with him, with this guy, with Mr. Woodard, it was a lot of things that happened to so many people. But most of the people were killed. So it wasn't like they told the story for themselves and what actually happened. You just know that somebody was killed. So of course, the people who was perpetrating all these heinous crimes is saying, well, this is what happened and this is what caused it. You know, you didn't have like two sides of the story. You had whatever they gave you. And to be honest with you, white people want to believe that they're not such barbaric creatures that they want to believe anything that would justify the reason why this person would do this, because they just can't believe that their uncle, their dad, their granddad, their brothers and stuff like that would do anything that bad to anybody. So anything that they gave them, they just took it and ran with it because they just don't want to believe that anybody would do that. So with him, because he survived and was able to tell his story, people got to see both sides of it. And it just appalled everybody. So it's the same with George Floyd. George Floyd actually died, but we got to see.
Right.
It was video evidence of the whole thing. So they got it. It was no way to deny anything. It was no kind of way to explain it away or anything. So it was kind of almost on the same level and scale, but back then. And black people have been saying it for years that this is what's happening. Nobody want to pay attention to it because they just don't want to believe that this kind of thing is going on. It got to be a reason, or they got to be exaggerated. That's not how it go. It got to be this and that because they want to believe the best of their family members and their friends and their colleagues and their church members and different things like that. But when you hear it and then you see a walking example of how evil people can be to somebody else, you can't help but believe it. And that's kind of what happened here. Well,
Right.
Orson Welles, see, what took so long was we didn't have social media back then. Everything was slow.
Right.
Orson Welles, he signed the light on it. He was like the what they call the Facebook and the internet sleuths back then. He took that and ran with it. He had to know what was going on. He had to sensationalize it. Everybody listened to him, and it was almost one of those who done it podcasts and different things like that. And I applaud him for it because had it not been for him, we probably would have never known what happened to this gentleman. Besides just that little community, and the community would in the community he lived in probably would have played like they didn't know what was happening.
Right. And you're
I
gonna
feel
see.
for him.
Right, and you're gonna see. It was a judge.
Waring.
Yeah, Waring. He got involved in it, and we're gonna go ahead and go out to that part, and then see what was going on in the community. Even the president got involved in it. We're gonna learn about Truman.
Watch that by Truman because it explained a lot. Even he, once he heard the story and seen that it's somebody running around here and they gouged this man's eyes out and then tried to play like he did whatever, he couldn't. With him being the way he was, grew up in the South, calling people the N word and everything else because that was the culture of the day. That's the way people talk. It wasn't a big old thing like it is now.
Right.
Even with him living in that culture and being around those people, he was appalled. He was really outraged on the whole story. So he the one kind of spearбall everything as far as something got to be done.
Right. And later on, we're gonna see something that we saw with Martin Luther King at the Lincoln Memorial. See, they don't tell us about this, but I'm gonna show this in a minute. Let me go and get to the president part, and then we'll get to the judge part, and then I guess we'll see what you'll see what I'm talking about.
A multi-city, nationwide speaking tour that gathers huge
leaders for a meeting in the Oval Office.
This is when they get with Truman.
The meeting begins, and the civil rights leaders are asking the president to pass legislation prohibiting lynching in America. Harry Truman says to the leaders, I understand your concerns, but there's not in the will in this country for new legislation. Walter White is listening to this discussion, and he realizes that Harry Truman doesn't get it. He stops the discussion and says, Mr. President, I need to tell you the story of the blinding of Isaac Woodard.
People like Harry Truman need to be woken up. That was part of the NAACP's job, was to wake people up.
I think they
to
kind of
injustices they
sensationalized the story between the president
they ignored, that they were complicit in,
but I don't know.
and to make them see it.
Harry Truman, decades earlier after World War I, had been a returning veteran. A white returning veteran, to be sure. But the idea that a war veteran wearing his uniform
But it had to be
be pulled
something
off a bus
going on
and
because
attacked and beaten by
the
law
president was the
enforcement
one
officers
who
Yes.
insisted that the
surprised
Department of
Truman
Justice get into it.
and
So
enraged him.
something
Right.
happened.
Well, you know, he
became
was a captain
red-faced,
in the military.
extremely agitated,
That's what they just
jaw
said.
clenched, and then
Truman was
turns
a
to his
captain
staff
in the
and
military.
says, "My God, I didn't know it was as terrible as this. We have got to do something."
The next day, the president fired off a letter to his attorney general, referencing Isaac Woodard and insisting it would require the inauguration of some sort of policy to prevent such happenings. 5 days later, at Truman's insistence, the attorney general ordered federal prosecutors in South Carolina to initiate criminal proceedings against Police Chief Linwood Shaw.
This is unprecedented for the President of the United States to involve himself in what white Southerners see as a local matter.
This was a way of life for them. They thought it was perfectly normal for a Southern sheriff to get away with blinding a black man. And so the mere fact of the federal government's attention and engagement demonstrated that someone was watching. It demonstrated that perhaps the South would not be treated as this peculiar region that we won't touch. It was very, very powerful.
They used to beat him in the head, look like.
President Truman's resolve to hold Chief Shull accountable was met with predictable resistance, even by the U.S. attorney in charge of the case.
It is greeted in South Carolina with shock, anger, revulsion in the white political leadership. The U.S. Attorney for South Carolina wanted no part of this case. The Justice Department makes it very clear this is not a matter of debate. This is an order. You are to bring this case.
Okay, I think this is when the judge get involved.
It is.
Trying to speed it up so it don't get boring.
When Isaac Woodard returned to South Carolina for the trial, the NAACP dispatched Franklin Williams, one of their finest attorneys, to accompany him.
The NAACP sends Franklin Williams to travel with Isaac Woodard for several reasons. He's blind and needs somebody to navigate around. And also, they fundamentally don't trust the Department of Justice.
Franklin Williams recognizes that the object of this entire thing was to make it almost like a culture war. It was going to be out a Southern way of life versus these Northern activists and intruders trying to dictate their way of life on the South.
Williams offered plenty of assistance to the prosecution at their first and only meeting, less than 24 hours before the start of the trial. He had a list of possible witnesses, including bus passengers who had seen Linwood Shull's first unprovoked blows to Woodard's head.
Is this the part
He
where you
also
think the
had at the
soldiers
ready
got
a
involved?
report by NAACP investigators detailing Shull's history of violence against the black citizens in Batesburg.
Because they didn't know what happened to him. They
But
just
the
knew he got
prosecution
hit upside the
waved him
head and
off.
took him around the corner. They didn't know he got blinded. The bus went on. That's why I said that's the reason why they didn't say nothing, because they just thought he just got arrested and that was it.
Right.
And until Orson Welles came along, that's how they find out what town they were in from the people
Right.
on the bus. Orson
Right.
Welles started telling this story, and that's when people said, "Wait a minute, is that what happened? Because this is the town we were in," and somebody who knew his name knew this is what happened. And that's the
Yeah.
reason why didn't nobody say nothing, because they had enough sense to take him around the corner where he wasn't in front of everybody seeing what they were going to do to this man.
Right. So they
hit
didn't
him
know
up.
exactly what happened.
They didn't know what happened. They just assumed that he got arrested. I think that's
Right.
what happened. I think they
Right.
just thought that he got arrested. He got hit upside the head and got arrested. But getting hit upside the head then for a black man was normal. So
Right.
they was like, "Oh, this is a normal day,"
Right. Gotcha.
And they just went on around the corner, but they didn't know they gouged the man's eyes out. And once they started looking for him, that's when they started telling their story. That, I know who it was, and I know exactly when this happened because we were on the bus together. And that's how they started pinning, putting two and two together and started getting all these witnesses because the witnesses got in touch with them and let them know. But you got to understand, everybody didn't have phones then.
Right.
And even if they did have phones, they didn't have a way of knowing how to get in touch with nobody. So this was weeks and months in the making. This is not the instantaneous stuff that we got going on now.
Right. All right. Thank you for breaking that down for us. All right, we're going to move it a little forward. We're going to get to the judge. And I think this is him right here.
A police officer.
Judge Waring, like most in South Carolina's political class, harbored plenty of suspicions about federal intervention in this case. Chiefly that President Truman was motivated more by the coming midterms than a concern for justice.
Mm-hmm.
But Waring's skepticism began unraveling as soon as Isaac Woodard rose to testify.
He's wearing a brown suit. He has sunglasses. He has to be guided to the witness chair by court personnel. And he then begins on the direct examination to describe what happened. And the story is just completely credible. Waring knows it's true.
Waring is face to face with this man who bears on his body the scars of Southern racism. He cannot look away from this walking, talking tragedy of injustice.
The crux of the case is whether excessive and unnecessary force was used in regard to Isaac Woodard.
You don't say.
The police chief claimed, I only hit him once. I don't know how he got blinded. But how do you crush the globes of both eyes with one strike?
The government finished presenting its case against Shull after just an hour and 25 minutes.
Mm.
The prosecutors had not called witnesses who had seen the attack unfold or presented any evidence about Chief Shull's pattern of violence against the Black citizens of Batesburg. As the prosecution rested, Franklin Williams sat in the courtroom, furiously scrawling notes.
It was going to be a difficult case to win, but even given that, the Department of Justice acted with incompetence. They failed to call key witnesses. They let the defense lawyers examine the jury pool and ask them whether they had been members, all these white people, asked them whether they'd been members of the NAACP. I mean, they never asked them whether they'd been members of the Ku Klux Klan. They were just sort of incompetent from top to bottom. There's a reason for that. This is not a case that the Justice Department wanted to bring. And at trial, they showed that their heart was not in it.
Judge Waring was horrified that he was made part of this travesty. He sends the jury out to deliberate. And he tells his assistant United States Marshal, I'll be back in a few minutes. And the bewildered marshal says, Your Honor, you can't leave. This jury is going to be back in 5 minutes. He says, they're not coming back in 5 minutes because I won't be here. So he was not going to allow a jury to do a 5-minute verdict, which he thought would just be the capstone of a great injustice. That part he controlled, and he made them sit in that room and stew in their juices until he got back. Judge Waring walks down Main Street to the state capitol, and when he comes back 25 minutes later, they're banging on that door. They've been banging on it for 20 minutes, and they come out and they announce the acquittal of Linwood Shull.
That was the pop right there.
An exhausted Isaac Woodard had already retreated back to his hotel when he received the news. He
I want
wept,
y'all to see what he said once
then
he.
collected himself and stepped outside to face reporters. I'm not mad at anybody, he told them. I just feel bad. That's all. I just feel bad.
And so I'm gonna fast forward because they go into something else.
Inside the courthouse, Judge Waring hastily packed up his briefcase and then hurried to meet his wife, Elizabeth, whom he found badly shaken.
She had attended the trial. And she found
to say, how could he possibly not have known? He could not have known because
I got
to
a
be a
question.
comfortable middle class white
Hold on,
person
let
in
me,
this country generally involves refusing to see what is
Was that his wife?
That white woman?
Yeah, Elizabeth.
Yeah.
Because remember, he get with some lady and then he divorced his wife, the judge, and
Did he? I
finished out
must
his
have missed that
life
part.
with. Yeah, he finished out his life with Elizabeth. Well, with this new lady that he's studying white supremacy with. Let me see if this her. Let me make sure. Hold on a minute.
I had to get
I
that part
got.
because it seemed like it was the same woman to
No, I was
me.
remember he divorced the lady.
Oh,
Hold on.
okay.
Let me go back.
Because people started turning their back. The white community started turning their back on them
Yeah,
because I guess they start advocating for Mr. Woodard, and because they felt like he was turning the white how white people do, make it seem like that he was you know an in lover. That's what they was calling them and stuff like that.
right.
And
Well,
and so the only friends they had was black people for the longest, and I thought it was the same wife. I must have missed that part.
no,
But
it was a different woman. They were mad at him because him and that lady had been studying for so long, and then he turned around and divorced his wife. That was another reason they were mad at him.
oh, okay, okay.
I'll see if I can find that part.
But did you see how
vicious
fast that
when
they
the jury
came
came
back?
back on acquitted
Yeah, yeah.
charge.
Hold on a minute. Let me
No one noticed that she slipped out of the back of the courtroom in
talk
tears.
about that right quick.
Okay.
Okay, go ahead. That I held it up, so go ahead and talk about
I
that.
mean, that was like
Okay,
5 minutes and stuff. First of all, they didn't want to bring the case anyway. They made them bring the case. And so
right,
they did such a shot. It was just because they would, how somebody tell you, I'm gonna make you do whatever. And so
right,
you like, okay, well, I'm just gonna do it, but I ain't gonna do no good job. That's exactly what happened on this whole thing.
right,
And they knew that wasn't nobody finna sit up there and find this man guilty for nothing. He was gonna go free anyway. I've been
right,
on a jury before.
right,
And matter of fact, I just was recently on a capital murder. So it take you that long just to get lined up, walked out, go off in the jury room. It take you about 10 minutes to get situated. And they talk
right,
about they already had a verdict. They already knew they wasn't gonna convict this man in the beginning.
right,
You
right,
it's a lot go on. Like once you walk out, once you in the hallways, before you get to, it's a lot going on because when you in a jury, you're not named. Your
right.
jury number, whatever.
Yeah,
That's your name.
right,
The whole
right,
time you in jury. There ain't
right,
nobody but it's a couple. Once you back there, they may call you by name. But as far as the court is concerned, you one, two, you always that number. You walk in the same way, you leave the same way. You
right,
know, they have to have everybody stand up. You got to walk out, then come back. It's a lot. So for them to already say they just walked out, closed the door, turned around, and came back in. That's 5 minutes. That's exactly what
yeah,
they did.
yeah. That's basically what they did. That, like I say, remember. I want everybody to remember. This is a democratic state. This is the Democratic Party. This is not the Republican people. These are all Democrats doing this. Okay, and we have joined them. The majority of black people have joined these folks. This is the same folks. This is their grandparents in here with this man taking 5 minutes to put his life or not convict a person of their skin color. Right? These people have not changed. You know, they have not changed. This is the people that we work with, we go to school with, we do everything with, and they smile in our face. But when they get us in a situation of criminal injustice, they go against us. You know, so I just wanted to say that, and we're gonna keep on going here. But because I really want to know about this judge. You know, that's why him and his wife.
Yeah, I'm curious.
She was profoundly moved by the testimony of Isaac Woodard about what had happened to him at the hands of Chief Shaw.
Wait a minute.
She said she had never seen, never appreciated, never understood that these sorts of things could happen.
Now, she wasn't married to him at the time she was at that trial.
Elizabeth Avery Waring was from a well-to-do family in Michigan and had only come south late in life. Like Wades, she had never paid much attention to the racial caste system in and around Charleston.
Charleston, a gracious old city where memories and traditions live and thrive in a congenial air.
It kills me how they don't pay no
Everywhere is
attention
an
to
old time, almost an old world, charm and quaintness.
it. They never paid no attention to it. How you think you not? Because
They
ain't nobody
ignored it.
discriminate against you.
And everywhere, of course,
Right.
the Negroes.
They ignored it. They thought it was like a normal
The real
thing.
Negro quarters in Charleston may not boast classic colonial architecture in all its flower, but it has a quaintness all its own.
The Southern system of segregation wasn't just some benign system that whites and blacks acceded to and everybody was happy. It was a violent system. It was based on violence. If you got out of line, there was violent repression. And Woodard exemplified that. You know, for someone like Waring, he'd spent his whole life ignoring that.
I couldn't take it at first, Waring would later admit. He used to say it couldn't be true. You grow up in it and the moss gets in your eyes. You learn to rationalize away the evil and filth. And you see magnolias instead.
There is a willful blindness, frankly, among most white people about the truth of racism and white supremacy in this country. There is some ignorance because, of course, we live very segregated lives, but it's right to say, how could he possibly not have known? He could not have known because to be a comfortable, middle-class white person in this country generally involves refusing to see what is hiding in plain sight.
They didn't look at us as
The
humans. They
trial
looked at us as
shattered
animals.
their illusion about the benign nature of Southern
Okay,
life.
it's some that looked at us as animals, but for the other ones that did
And
not
once
look at us
shattered,
as animals, they looked at us like
Where
furniture.
do they go?
We was nothing. I mean, we was just part of the. They looked at us as furniture or like a appliance, something that
Right.
that everybody had, but
Right.
they didn't have a strong feeling one way or the other. And it was
Right.
something that was needed and necessary, and it was part of their life and what made their life easier. Like, a vacuum cleaner or a washing machine or something like that. Something that you just walk past, you do and say anything in front of because it's not a living, breathing creature. That's pretty much the reason why they just didn't pay no attention to it, was because we was nothing to them. They didn't have a disdain for us, but they didn't have no feelings for us either. We was nothing. We was like, it's whatever. Cause we made their life so comfortable
Right.
that they just really didn't pay us no attention. And it was
Right.
just part of everyday life. And some of them actually got headed in their minds that they thought that we was happy doing it.
Right.
We were
That's
happy,
what
you
it
know,
was.
because we smiled and called them yes ma'am, no sir, and you know, made their lives, you know, every time we spoke to them in happy tones that
Right.
we was liking that.
Right.
And they fixed it in their mind that that's the way we just was okay with that. We was okay with that living because I guess they felt like we thought that we was grateful to have the jobs that we had and get paid the money that we had, and
Right.
that because they were happy they were getting treated well, even though they could
Right.
see clearly that we were not. But
Right.
that's so that they can live with themselves. They can look themselves in the mirror. They can sit up there and sleep good at night. Because
Right.
if they thought if they looked at the reality, they couldn't. It's gonna have to change the status quo, and they weren't ready to change the status quo. That means they would have to clean their own houses and keep their own kids and cook their own food and different things like that. They didn't have drivers and different things like that. They was gonna have to give them equal treatment, pay them more money or something.
Right.
They gonna have to be nice to them and all this other stuff, and they weren't willing to give that up. They just really wasn't. So they pretend like it didn't happen.
Right. So that's what I'm saying. If you look at it today, it's the same way
Mm-hmm.
because black people, we go to work, we pretend that we're happy, we pretend that everything cool.
Uh-huh.
Man, we just get used to pretending, right?
Uh-huh.
We don't
Uh-huh.
have
That's
no
called
more
code
rights than
switching.
we
Mm-hmm.
did back in the civil rights era. We got the same situation, except we're getting better pay now. Some of us are getting better pay. Some of us got better job. And you see some of us on TV looking good, making money like the white
Mm-hmm.
people make money. But we
Mm-hmm.
still on the bottom. That's what people don't get. As a group, we still on the bottom. We still going through the same thing.
Yeah, we do go through the same thing because they accept some of us and they try to play like, oh well,
Yeah.
oh they just like us or whatever. And
Right.
we are like them. But in their minds, they feel like because they see a few of us and they embrace a few of us, they have a few of us over in the house. They may have a friend or two that they
Yeah.
really
Yeah.
just love. But they love they nannies. I mean, they
Right.
darn near care for their nannies back in the day. So
Right.
that's not that's to be understood. Hell, they love their dogs,
Right.
but um, it's just it's crazy to me the way they just love to be blissfully ignorant of so many things because, like I said, it's just comfortable. They
Right.
don't want to change nothing because if they saw what they're supposed to see, then they're gonna have to be impelled to change, compelled to change a whole lot, and they're not willing to do that.
Right. And I'm saying this too. I'm saying that we are not making them do it because we making them think that we good. And
Yeah.
for real, we make
Uh
them
huh.
think we good.
Well, no, this is it. Some of us think we good. It's
Right.
like
That's what
they're
I'm saying.
making it. We honestly think that we got it good. We
Right.
honestly do. But like Chris Rock said, and I never forget this. I'm Chris Rock is okay.
Yeah,
Sometimes
I
you
got
sit up there, and I watched one of his concerts a while back when he had like these simultaneous concerts where he had it in different countries and different things like that.
you. Yeah.
And he was saying he if you look at it like he broke it down. He broke it down. I never forgot that how he said that he is a famous person.
Right.
He's on TV. He in different countries. He's selling out arenas and all this other stuff. Right. He live in a
Right.
house.
Right.
His next door neighbor was a dentist, a
Right.
white dentist.
Right.
He said, "What kind of mess is that? How in the world somebody who's on a status and he's not trying to say he was all that,
Right.
but he has to sell out arenas in different countries, be on movies and everything else, and somebody with a simple profession, which a dentist ain't no simple profession, but they're not doctors. I mean, they doctors, but they're not doctors. Can live next door to him and have an equal house as he have, and come
Right.
knock on his door and smile at his face and everything else. They on the same level.
Right.
That couldn't happen nowhere else. And this, if that was a black man and he was a dentist, he would never be in the same neighborhood as Chris Rock.
Right.
But That's the lives the white people live. You can just go to school, get you a decent job, and have you be a regular professional, and you can live a rich and
Yeah,
famous life.
yeah, yep. Depending on who you know,
Uh-huh.
as a white
Yeah.
person,
As white,
because see, they look
mhm.
out for their friends and families, and long as you don't go outside with what like this white judge, he went outside the perimeters of
Mhm.
whiteness. And see,
Mhm.
once you do that, they treat you worse than us.
I know, because then
You know,
they was in level, and
right?
so go be with them. That's
Yeah,
just how it
yeah,
is. And
yeah.
he can't make their conscious decisions and go ahead. That's where I'm gonna be.
And see that be the deal. See, black people, when somebody white step out like that for us, even if
Hmm.
somebody, even Martin Luther King, Malcolm, all them stepped out for us, but we
Hmm.
never returned the favor.
You right.
You do what I'm saying? We never
Uh-huh.
returned the favor to them. And I think that's what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to wake us up to that. I know it's going to be a hard road, but I'm trying to wake us up to we have to pay back what they did for us. Yes, we
Hmm.
just living a bull crap life too. We trying to all go to heaven or whatever, but I don't see how we gonna go to heaven when we didn't do what they did. They gave
That's
their
true.
life. You know what I mean?
We live in an easy life, and this
Compare,
is the
yeah,
stuff that they had to. This is the stuff that they had to deal with in order to ensure that this generation and a couple other generations gonna have a better life. And then we
right,
out here just doing all kinds of silliness and having social media pranks and just
yeah,
things like that, and worried about some mess when
right,
we got folks that's running around here and done sit up here and done lost their eyesight and
right,
done been burnt to death and everything
right,
like that just because they want to stand up for their rights at that point.
right, right. And these are just a few people that we see that we know that happened to. Millions of
That's
people
what
this
I'm
happened
saying.
to. Yeah,
Yeah, it happened to a lot, but he lived to tell the story. And
right,
that's the whole thing. Him living to tell the story is the same as having a camera up in your face. And
right,
so it's this day and time. And he lived to tell his story, and that's the reason you couldn't deny it.
right,
You couldn't ignore it. You had to see it because him walking blind and with those glasses on his face, you couldn't deny that story. How
right,
did this man be blind? He didn't knock his own eyes out his head.
right, right,
Somebody did it to
right. And you can look at this picture right here. All them white boys. Look how many it is against this one black guy
him.
on the
Exactly.
ground here.
Uh-huh.
And
And
and the
even if you
dudes,
decided that you was gonna stick up for yourself, right?
right,
So these people had families they had to look after.
right,
They had jobs or they had land that they had to work. They had to
right,
sell the stuff that they reaped from those lands. And if it was nobody to sell to, and those people decided they were gonna boycott you, you was gonna starve.
right,
What your kids gonna eat?
right,
You had decisions to make. Why all
right.
these people talking about, I ain't my ancestors, I ain't this and that. Yes, I
Yeah,
get that. You're not. But it wasn't a major thing to where everybody decided, okay, well, this ain't gonna happen, then everybody gonna stick behind you. No, that's not how it went. You sit up there, you stood up for yourself. If they didn't kill you, they ran you out of town or they starved you out.
right.
That's just how they went.
Yep,
So you had
yep.
kids, and you didn't have like one child. You had a whole bunch of kids you had to take
Sure
care
did.
of.
Sure did.
You had
My
a wife
grand,
you had to take care of. Not only that, you had parents and other family members in that town that you had to. If you act the fool, they were gonna act the fool with them too. So they was gonna
right,
be starving.
right,
You know and then when the whole towns got together and said, we're not gonna put up with this. Like over in Tulsa and Rosewood and all those other places.
right,
What happened to that? They burnt after they realized they couldn't fight them. They sit up there and bombed them, and they
right,
and they burnt them out, and they
right,
and they killed half the folks, and the ones who could get away got away.
right,
It's sad because it's one thing to where you make a fight that town, but when the federal government or the state government get in there, you outnumbered. I don't
that's
care how
right,
big and bad you are.
that's right.
There's only
And
so much you can do. You got limits.
right, right. And that's what I'm saying. Even then, coming back to Tulsa, the Democrat Party had a party down there in Tulsa for those children of the ones that got bombed. Those children are still alive. They like 100 and some years old, right? And
Well,
the
I
Democrat,
don't know. I don't know if they still alive. I think the last
yeah,
one that just died. I'm
yeah,
not
he
sure.
just died, but she or he was alive at the time they had this party, and because they had a trial there, right? And Joe Biden, and all of them came down. All they did was dance. They didn't give the people their money. Those people were asking for their money from their parents that they bombed and destroyed their livelihood, and never repaid those folks. And they were asking for their money. I don't know if the person's still alive, but they passed away. I mean, from
Yeah.
what I understand, most of them died. So
Yeah,
they
because that
never
was over
gave those
100
people their
years.
money.
That was over 100 years ago.
Yeah,
So if they were survivors, they were babies at that
yeah,
time. So they didn't
right,
even they have zero memory. It was once they started bringing out and they start, at first when it came out it was called riot. I mean, and so we recently they started calling it a massacre because that's exactly what it was.
right. It was a
And
mess.
um some of them it was like the youngest ones that was that was there that had some memory of it. They was like 5 and 6 years old. They died maybe 10 years ago. And the ones that was babies during that time period, they just died because this was
Right,
over 100 years ago.
right.
And
But
so
those
those
people
people died
remember.
and they never
I'm,
got anything. They
that's
never got
right.
anything back. But
Guess what?
their descendants and maybe not even their kids because they was 100 years old.
Right.
Their kids is in their 80s. And so
Nobody
they
got
possibly
nothing.
died too. And
Nobody
it's
got
sad.
nothing. Yeah, nobody got nothing.
All they
No,
got is a corner and one whole street block. And
I
that's it.
think I think they were just they gave them a loan or something,
Did they get a
or
loan?
they got a loan or a grant. It wasn't that much, but they got something to like say something. But I don't think they got anything from the government really.
No, because they tried to make it seem like it was their fault.
Right,
Why you gonna give somebody some money when you said it was their fault for the
right,
reason why all this done
right,
happened?
right.
No, they got nothing. All they got is a revitalization program.
And again,
They fixed up the block
right,
again on that one little block out of all them acres and blocks that they had. All
right,
they got was one whole block, and that's
right,
over there where the Vernon AME Church is,
right.
and I think it was a bank or something. But it's
And
not much. It's not a
right,
whole lot over there.
right. And
And that's
again,
all those people got.
I want to say this. That's your Democrat Party. That's your Democrat Party. They were
Well,
there.
yes.
They didn't give them shit. So let's go on with this movie because we're gonna end up ending this in a minute. I wanted to find out about this judge for some reason. Him and his wife thing. Then we're gonna go toward the end after this.
Old time, almost an old world, charm and quaintness. And everywhere, of course, the Negroes.
The Negroes.
The real Negro quarters in Charleston may not boast classic colonial architecture in all its flower, but it has a quaintness all its own.
The Southern system of segregation wasn't just some benign system that whites and blacks acceded to and everybody was happy.
I think it's right.
There's no course on this. There's no course on this. They certainly didn't know of anyone in Charleston that could help them better understand. So the two of them began a series of study on race relations in the South.
They take in books every night. They read them, and then they have sessions after dinner where they
fell
ask
in
each
love
other
with her.
questions. And they basically create their own personal seminar to try to understand racism in America.
The Warings started with 2 groundbreaking new works that examined the origins and the impact of white supremacy in the South. W.J. Cash's book, The Mind of the South, and Gunnar Myrdal's An American Dilemma. Both books destroyed the comforting story white Southerners like to tell themselves, that slavery and Jim Crow had always been paternal institutions.
I hate when they show us like that. They're like, that's
had
all we
long
did.
lived under the protections of a benevolent master
We
race.
built the damn country. We built buildings.
Both made plain that white moderates like Waring himself
raise the kids.
were complicit in this racist, violent system.
These are important books. They're complicated books. They're challenging books. Judge Waring described them as tough medicine for him.
Look at her smiling.
Yeah.
They rode through different neighborhoods and began to see the different ways that white Charlestonians and black Charlestonians experienced life in the city. As they begin to read and understand and question all that they've thought about race in the past, it becomes clear to both of them that the road ahead is going to be a rocky road, but that this just may be the road that they are uniquely prepared to follow.
Looking askance at Charleston society wasn't such a great leap for either of the Warings, who had been increasingly feeling like outsiders in their own hometown. Just the previous year, Judge Waring had scandalized his friends and neighbors by abruptly announcing to his first wife, Annie, that he'd fallen in love with their bridge partner, Elizabeth.
See?
Oh, okay. See, yeah. Okay,
That's
I
Annie,
missed
right?
it.
Divorce was not only frowned upon in South Carolina,
See, they didn't like him
It
no
was
way because
illegal.
he left his wife first.
but Waring
Okay,
devised
yeah.
a plan to send Annie to Florida, where she could legally petition for divorce. A week after the dissolution of his marriage to Annie, Wades and Elizabeth were wed.
Okay. Okay.
They're friends in Charleston. We're talking about a couple hundred
that's-
people
that's
with
how they
a
met.
sort of social set in Charleston. They blame Elizabeth for
Let's
the
get to
breakup
the end of
of
the
the marriage.
story.
Elizabeth, a Northerner now on her 3rd marriage, was an easy target for Charleston's society
Oh,
dames,
she was a
who branded
husband.
her a
That was her
floozy
third marriage.
and told their children,
Yeah.
you may be polite if the new signed an oath declaring their opposition to racial integration.
So this is the part where they get into his trial, I think. Oh no, this is the separate but equal thing.
Yeah.
They make
Waring
start-
summoned
make it where
nearly
you can
start
100
doing a whole
officials
lot
of the South
more,
Carolina
Because
Democratic Party
they only 3
and
years
ordered them
after
to
Brown
register
was
black
only black
citizens
people.
without
So
swearing
them
any
being
oath.
with black people all the time, they start
He
seeing
tells
different
them
things.
that a federal judge faced with contempt has 2 choices. He can
Okay. Now what were you saying?
I was saying that with when they're being shunned by the white community, right? Because he just
Mhm.
kept doing different things and writing these books and bring it. Plus, they was already being shunned because he done got rid of his southern white
Yeah.
wife,
Yeah. Right.
for this old northern Yankee woman that done came down here from Michigan with
Yeah.
all these old ideas from the north. Corrupted all them. They just say she a whole husband anyway because it's her 3rd husband. They
Right.
just stop fooling with him. Okay. So the only friends they had was the black folks,
Right. Right.
because the black people started trusting him because he really genuinely was trying to advocate for them. Because like I
Right.
always said, you always need one good white person on your corner because
Right.
ain't nobody paying no
Right.
attention to all black folks. They just ain't.
Right.
You got to have a
Right.
black. You have to have a white person to speak
least
to other
one.
white people because
Right.
they know how each other talk. They know how each
Right.
other think. They know how
Right.
They be like, okay, if they got you in this corner, why? They gonna listen
Yeah.
to you. Whereas, or we talking, we just talking. This
Right.
I'm tired of hearing this same old story.
Yeah.
But they gonna
Yeah.
want to know what makes this white man get in these people corner. So you
Right.
don't need one. What you need? I'm not saying just we have to have one, but we have to have a genuine, good
Right.
white person
Right.
that's for real for the cause to be there on our side. Because if
Right.
not, they're not the people who's making the laws is not gonna pay attention to them. They're not gonna say
Right.
the right words. We ain't gonna say the right words. And especially in this day and time, we're gonna get mad. We'll turn on some tables, all
Right.
kinds of stuff. So we they know what to say and what not to say. That's not gonna, that's gonna make them start listening and stop listening.
Right. That's facts. So let's get on with this story here. I'm gonna go. This is where they dealing with the school system and all that. So I'm gonna go and get
Uh-huh.
past that. We'll get back to the story of.
Yeah, it
I
just
just
like
wanted people to
snowball.
know. I just wanted people to know the civil rights movement really started with this guy, right? With Isaac Woodard. That's
Yeah,
what I'm
because he
really.
got lost in the South. They had said at the beginning, in 10 years, ain't nobody gonna know his name. He got
Right.
lost in the South, and nobody talked about him no more. But
Right.
that's because then it wasn't nothing but radio.
Right.
And people weren't listening on radio, even if it was to go back and watch this stuff and stuff. Wasn't nobody listening to Orson Welles no more. So
Right.
the only thing that you had was TV. And since he
Right.
wasn't in the TV era, wasn't nobody paying no attention, and you couldn't
Right.
go back.
So that's what I'm saying.
So
They had, when they did when Martin Luther King came up, that's
uh-huh,
when you could see it. They videotaped it, they talked about it, you know what I mean?
and they
So
could
that's
continue
when
to get on my
visually
nerve,
see.
quote him every time you turn around. I can't stand it. Oh,
I know. But anyway, we're gonna go ahead and get on to the end of here. We almost finna hit our 2-hour mark.
uh-huh.
Let me oh yeah, this is interesting about the dog thing. Let's go to that.
Yes, I remember that.
Burned with volunteer firemen standing out front, refusing to provide service.
They did that to send a message, And when his house caught on fire, we thought ours would be next.
They have children, they have families, they have responsibilities. They have to think about all that. If I lose my farm, what happens next?
This is what you were saying a while ago.
Maybe I'll be killed. And also, maybe I'm also the breadwinner in my family. It's not just I'm going to be killed. My family's going to be destitute.
Now, here was Robert Carter, who didn't have to stay behind and live in Clarendon County, asking these parents to be the first wave of a frontal attack on the most jagged ramparts of segregation. There was a pregnant silence when Carter finished his presentation.
And then when old man at the back of the church raised his hand, he said, "We wondered how long it would take you lawyers to get there." They were ready.
Yeah. This is when black people joined together at this point right here. They wasn't afraid to stand up.
When you had enough, you just had enough. I mean, you just can't take it anymore. Where can you go? You can't back up. You just can't. You got to go forward. And that was their mindset. Not any of those families backed down.
Clarendon County is almost like the Isaac Woodard case. The starkness of the facts, the depth of the racism goes to the very heart of the unfairness and the ugliness of white supremacy. And in that case, for Marshall, it's going right into the eye of the storm.
Marshall didn't expect to win Briggs v. Elliott in the federal court of South Carolina. But his team did need to build a record of evidence, one that would give the United States Supreme Court a solid rationale for ending segregation in public schools, and essentially
was actually at the
burying
beginning
its
of
own
Thurgood
separate
Marshall,
but
too.
equal precedent.
Mm-hmm.
This was him
Marshall
when he
has
first got
to
started.
show, well, no matter what you did with resources, just the mere fact of a statute that requires segregation is unconstitutional. Why is it unconstitutional? Well, for us, it would be easy. This is just subordination of black people. But for them, it was hard because they didn't question it. They weren't thinking that segregation was harmful to black people.
He said,
You
if
hear
you
that
had an
with the
automobile
whitest
accident,
country?
I would have
I mean,
to
the
show
whitest
how
city?
the accident injured you. Here in this case, he has to show how segregation has injured his clients. What harm has it caused? Enter 37-year-old psychologist Kenneth Clark and his now famous dolls.
Kenneth and Mamie Clark, the first Black Americans to earn PhDs in psychology from Columbia University, had recently begun conducting a series of research experiments to determine the effect of segregation on Black children. The tools of the Clarks' experimental trade were breathtakingly simple. A suitcase full of dolls, 4 of them gender neutral, identical in every way except for skin color. 2 were white and 2 were brown. Dr. Kenneth Clark explained their extraordinary findings to NAACP attorney Robert Carter, who lobbied his colleagues to make the Clarks' research central to their legal strategy.
There's a great deal of debate around the table at Legal Defense headquarters in New York City. They are thinking, what are we going to do with what they call these damn dolls? Marshall sits at the end of the table, says very little, just smokes and smokes and smokes as the attorneys hash it out, until finally Marshall says, I have to show injury. The dolls are how I'm going to show the injury to the children. We're taking the dolls with us to South Carolina.
By daybreak, on May 28, 1951, a caravan of cars filled with parents, teachers, and children was well on its way from Somerton to Charleston, but they were finally going to get their day in court. As they pulled up to the federal courthouse, the citizens of Clarendon County were awed to discover they were not the only ones who had made the journey.
From across the state, African Americans got up early in the morning and drove to Charleston. And by the time the sun rose that morning, they were lined up as far as the eye could see.
Out the sidewalk, round the corner, these folks stood out there in hot May weather. You ever been to South Carolina in May? It's hot, sticky hot.
Thurgood Marshall, arriving that morning for the trial, was
that's
amazed.
May?
He had
They got
never
on coats?
seen such a crowd.
Huh?
And he turned to
They
Robert
got on
Carter
coats in May?
and said, Bob, it's all over.
That's what I said.
Carter, his young associate, said,
Apparently the story
Thurgood, what are you
got
talking
mixed
about?
up. Because he had
He
on
said,
a coat.
They're not scared anymore.
For Marshall to see the
Yeah, maybe that
throngs,
was
the
a stock
crowds
video of him
coming
walking some
the
other
first
time,
day of
because that couldn't have been in May.
trial showed him that something had shifted in the South. They're not afraid anymore to fight for their full citizenship and to make the statement of how important this is to them.
With the courtroom packed beyond capacity that hot spring morning, Marshall began arguing his case before a panel of 3 federal judges, one of whom was Judge Wadey's Waring. He sparred with defense witnesses from the school district and presented his own expert testimonies on the egregious disparities between the county's Black and white schools. Marshall did not stop there. He proceeded to show the court that the damage to the Black children in Clarendon County was real and quantifiable. His key witness took the stand that afternoon. Dr. Kenneth Clark described for the court the doll experiments he and his wife had conducted on hundreds of Black school children across the country, asking them to evaluate and compare the virtues of the Black and white dolls.
Kenneth and Mamie Clark conduct these studies over a period of months, and it traumatizes them to have to do this over and over again and get the same answers over and over again from different children attending different schools.
Chose the white dolls
in different states.
Mm-hmm.
every time.
Without fail,
This is a
the Black
famous
children
experiment.
preferred the white doll.
Right. Which make us hate each other. That's all. It just means we hate each other, but we don't
No,
know
not
it.
necessarily. Not necessarily.
Not only does the
It just
NAACP have
Hold on.
all
Let
of the
me
information
stop.
it needs on
The wrong.
Who would have guessed?
Go ahead.
it not necessarily. This is a famous experiment. We've learned about that. You know, my major in college was psychology, but it lets them know. Like he said, he had to say what the separate but equal. So the whole thing was the white people always said they go to their schools, but they got the same stuff that we have because they got equal facilities, and they had to show no, we don't. You know, we have to make it to where both of them are going to school and having the same access to the same kind of stuff. So we were separate, but we were sitting there. Make the kids clearly saw that the good stuff was over there with the white people. So they clearly saw it. It's no way in the world. You know, if the kids can see that their stuff is not equal, then that proves that it's not equal. So they clearly saw that they asked them which kids was the good kids. They always chose the black kids. Which kids which kids was the bad kids? It always chose the black kids. Which kids was the good kids? They always chose the white kids. Anything that had to do with good, white. Anything that had to do with bad, black. And that's how it was because the kids, they saw what kind of schools those kids went to. They saw what kind of equipment that they had. They saw what kind of teachers that they had. They saw what kind of buildings that they were in, what kind of books that they had. They saw that they had all the good stuff. So of course, the good kids is going to have the good stuff.
So again, I agree with you what you said, but still, deep inside, it brings out a hate for the dark.
Yes, in a way, yes, they do. Because why would you want to be
Psychologically,
something where why am I going? Who wants to be on the bottom of the totem pole? Who wants that?
right?
Nobody does.
Psychologically, you start to hate your color. That's why they
Yeah,
had to stop that. They were entering, they was making the kids hate each other, being
yeah, they
dark.
was making. Yeah, they was hating being dark, and they did. They did hate that because they felt like
They got
because
mistreated most.
they got mistreated only because they were dark. Now, if they was
Right,
white, they would have had a fresh shake in life.
right,
So they hated being black, and that was part of the injury. And
right,
part of that, well, like I said, if the kids saw that that if it was supposed to be equal, they wouldn't have never. Some of those kids would say, "Well, I like some of the
yeah,
good dogs is black dogs," but they
right,
never said that.
right,
So the kids equated that because they were having better treatment, better everything over there in the white schools, that equals them being good because kids don't know how to think otherwise. You know, certain things
right,
it's a certain level that they can go to, and that was the level on their level. That's how they equate good and bad. Well, how they were
right,
getting treated
right,
and the facilities that they had and the equipment that they had and the clothes that they wore, different things like that. So that proves that it wasn't equal because if it was equal, some of those kids would have picked the black kids for being good.
right. Okay, so we're gonna end up with his story here. I'm gonna get to the end where we get back to him. They they end up going to the Supreme Court and winning, and so they get back to the end of where Brother Isaac is.
Fought battle, but the beginning of a new one.
Everyone was celebrating in the office. Marshall said, "You're all a bunch of fools. You know, we have a lot more work ahead. We have to get back to work." He
I think
understood
she's the
what was
president
to
of the
come.
NAACP
As a
now.
leader, you can barely
And she might be
experience excitement without looking around the corner for whatever
I
is
don't
the
think
next
she is
challenge or
now,
work that has to
but
be
she
done.
was at this time. But it's a black guy now, ain't it? I think it's a black guy.
It probably is more than likely. I know we had
We're
been
gonna, we're
jealous
gonna
for the
go into
longest.
that too.
Hello,
I'm
welcome
gonna
to
start
Like It Is.
doing like organization.
Today's edition features a look back in time into the tragedy of Isaac Woodard, a man whose confrontation with Southern racism came to symbolize the brutality in America at the end of World War II.
And this is the end of what he.
Nearly 40 years after his blinding, Isaac Woodard agreed to revisit the details of his ordeal with a local television journalist.
Do you think back towards those days? To have something like this happen to you while you're still in uniform?
A lot of people ask me, was I bitter with, with the world or with everybody? I told them, no, but I wasn't, because I said, well, everybody ain't bad, that I know. And the one that I was really bitter against, the one that really did it to me.
He never served a day? And
No.
Kept his job?
Right. Kept his job. Didn't even take him off the force,
Well, the first few years, he called them names I can't even mention. But he grew out of it.
Now, that's a shame. He got to grow
I saw
out
the
of
part
it.
of him after the bitterness and the anger and the frustration. Most of the time I saw him, he was smiling. He was so well dressed. There was a tie clip on the tie. You could tell that he walked, he was proud of who he was.
In 1962, the U.S. Army finally granted Sergeant Woodard the disability benefits
how long it
they
took
had
them to
denied
get this
him
man his money.
in the years following his blinding. Eventually, he was able to buy several properties throughout the Bronx and provide a comfortable life for himself and his family.
That's good.
What do you think that people should learn about what's happened to Isaac Woodard? What lesson is there about America?
Well, I mean, the way I feel about it, that people should learn how to live with one another and how to treat one another. Because after all, we all are human beings, regardless of your color. Everybody should do sympathy for one another, Don't do cruel things to one another that you don't want to be did to you. That's the way I feel about it.
Isaac Woodard died in 1992 at age 73, entirely unaware that his simple request to be treated like a man and the injustice that followed it had emboldened a federal judge and the President of the United States to pursue the destruction of legalized segregation.
All right. Well, we did a good job tonight. We finished that. That was a good lesson for me. I don't know about you.
Yeah, I enjoyed it because, like I said, I never heard this man. I never heard nobody blinding nobody or anything. I'm all for it. I love PBS. But, when you said something, I'm like, well, what are you talking about? But I loved it. I like hearing about it because, like I said, I never heard of him. And it was very interesting. But, you put it in, it parallels with what's happening here in the recent times with the George Floyd thing. And I can see how it ignited a movement, and different things, because like I said, he lived to tell the story, whereas most of them, they died.
Right.
They were killed and they died, or they got ran out of town and they weren't trying to come back. They weren't trying to, they didn't want nobody to know where they were because they didn't want nobody to come after them. So nobody got to tell the story, and even if they did tell the story, wasn't nobody gonna believe them.
Right.
We had a whole blind man here.
Yep.
And Orson Welles helped bring out their story too.
Right. And what else you want to leave us with last words on this? What's your last words on this?
It's a lot changed. Lord knows a lot done changed, but it's a lot done stayed the same too. It now it's more hidden. It's not as blatant. It's undercover, right. and we just have to. I wish we would stick together more as a people and stop trying to. They keep us distracted on this little stuff, Every time you turn around, there's something else going on. We got Diddy, we got Jay-Z that just came out with some more stuff and different things like that. If we start focusing, that stuff is not. I mean, it's important. Don't get me wrong. Look, Jesus, don't get me wrong. But it's not. It's important to their things that they got going on. But as a whole, for for what we got going on, it's not that important. It's things that we need to be advocating for our own selves for the betterment for everybody.
Right.
As a whole.
Right.
And stop fighting against each other.
Right.
It's just we need to pull together.
Right.
Or it's gonna go back to where it is, because the people who's in office now ain't too much better than the ones that gassed that man's eyes out.
Right.
So we gonna have to get it together.
Right.
We're gonna have to get it together.
Right. Like I keep saying, I did this story for a reason. I wanted people to know that a lot of what we fighting for is basically through the Democrat Party. They the racists. Republicans are the racists too. That's the other side of the coin. But we keep joining these people. I think it's time for us to separate from that, to start our own black little party, so they can fight over us on who get the vote. You know what I'm saying?
Well, they can, but it's gonna have to be. I think you get this election right here has waking up a lot of folks, and everybody's not willing to fight for everybody else no more. Not like they have been. We have been notoriously been the defenders of everybody and wants to take care of everybody and all this other stuff, because we're saying it from experience. Nobody's been paying no attention to us. Just like these people that's been running around here, like I said, they sit there and they, even if we told the story, don't nobody want to believe it. We've been telling the story. Don't nobody want to believe it.
Right.
So now it's time for them to find out. And our hands if we threw our hands in on this whole thing. Ain't nobody trying to do it no more. Y'all finna find out now.
Right.
And so until they get tired of it and they want to change, that's when they're gonna try to look for us to come help them fix something like we always have done. And fix America. Because without, if they want to get somewhere, they're gonna have to give us something.
Right.
They're gonna have to give us something more than what they have been, because they just spit in our faces with this last election. That's not even funny.
So
they can hang it up now.
Right. So that's what I'm saying. I'm glad that the Democrat Party lost, so they can see how important it is to have black people. And now you need to give us, and I'm asking all black people to make them, before you get them folks your vote, make them give us something. Mm-hmm. Our ancestors died for, if they don't give us nothing, our ancestors died for no reason. And we have to do our part. I don't think they died just for it to go nowhere. I don't think Martin Luther King gave his life for it to go nowhere. So we have to do our part. This is our generation time, So
that's true. It is our generation time, and it, to be honest with you, when people said that, I always thought, no, that's not how the way to do it. Okay, because I always said, what you're not gonna get white people to start listening to you if we sit out and then they get over there. They sure ain't finna give us nothing.
Right.
So who is gonna be in a point to where they can give us something if we're not in the fight?
Right.
But I got to thinking about it, especially after this. Like now, I can care less. What's happening? Y'all get whatever, because we suffering anyway. We've been at the bottom and we haven't had anything, and we haven't been given anything, so we weren't gonna get nothing first. So now it's time for everybody else to see what we were talking about, what we was trying to warn them. We was trying to sound the trumpets forever. Nobody wanted to pay us no attention, and everybody voting against their own best interest. So now, somebody who, if you want to get elected from this point on, you're going to have to make sure that you get the black people on your side.
Right.
Because they're not going to do it no more.
That's right.
And the only way to do it is if you're going to have to say what you're going to do for us. And I get it now. And if they want to win, and I guarantee you they want to win, because these politicians, that's their livelihood, that's their profession, that's their careers. And they're going to do whatever it takes to win. So they're going to have to give us something in order to win. Because once we say we're going to go for somebody, they will win.
That's right.
You can't win an election with you
Without
can
us.
if none of us are voting. But if you want to win and beat certain people and guarantee that you're gonna win, you're gonna have to have a black vote.
That's
you
right.
are gonna have to have a black vote.
Right.
And I'm like you. After this election, I'm not giving my vote freely.
That's
I'm
right.
not. And I was never just a stock Democrat. I was one of the people who voted for certain issues and whoever said that they were gonna do whatever, who was best for the job in certain things. I'm more of a state
Yeah, I
voter
got you.
anyway.
Yeah.
Because those are the ones that's going to affect us the most. The state representatives, the Senate, the different things like that, and people that have to, in governments and stuff. That's the ones that's going to affect your life the most.
Right.
When it comes to those state laws. So, but from this point on, forget everybody, because it don't matter what we do anyway. So if you want us to help you win, you're going to have to give us something.
That's right. And I pray that all black people would do that. Make them give us some before we give them some.
I'm hearing it more and more now. I get it and I see it a lot more now than I did in the recent past. And I mean, when I say recent past, in like a month or so. So I'm seeing it more. And so I can see it in here. It may not be this election. I know it's not this election cycle. It may not even be the midterm. But maybe in 4 years, maybe we have to wait 6 before we get anything. But we won't get nothing in the first place, so we ain't hurting nothing. We ain't hurting no way.
Right.
So maybe somebody gonna want it bad enough to where they gonna really give it to us. And they really gonna do what they need to do to get us to vote for them. Because what'll happen is we'll get them in there, then they don't stand by their promise. They won't have another election after that. So they know they have to give it to us at that point.
Right.
So we have to be united. It's hard. I hate to say that, but we haven't been united in such a long time that it's hard to say that everybody gonna do it.
Right.
But I hope so. I hope enough of us do to where we can make some kind of progress.
Right. That's exactly why I started this program. I would like to have a black block here started in the DFW area where we vote as a block. If y'all want something from us, you're going to have to go through all us to get it. And then you got to give. We got to make sure we get something before we even give you our vote. So that's how it's going to go. Anyway,
I'm all for it now.
Yeah, thank you for joining me. I appreciate you.
You're
You stand 10 toes down with me. I appreciate that. And we're going to go ahead and end this program. I thank everybody for watching. If you don't watch now, you will watch later. Trust me, you will watch one day. May not be today, but you will watch one day. Because this history right here, this is history. Somebody gonna see it.
If nothing else, go back, go and watch this story. This story is very interesting.
Okay.
And it would enlighten a bunch of people. It was because I'm telling you, this is one of those hidden history stories that I'm guaranteeing you probably about 80% or not more. Black people don't know nothing about this. And I'm a history person, but I never heard of him.
Right.
It's the first time I ever heard of it, and it's very interesting. I was after I woke up, I was really into the story. I was really into the story. I was trying to figure out how this happened, and I just couldn't believe it. It just puzzled me how I've never heard of it. I mean, nobody ever brought this man up ever again,
Right. Yeah, I had to dig in there and get him, and then there's some more of that stuff that we don't know that I'm gonna bring up. But
okay.
Yeah, this was one of them.
Okay, well, bring it on.
Yeah, this was one of those great stories. I'm gonna keep bringing them. Trust me on that. Let me get back to where I'm trying to get out of here. Okay, let me stop the program.